Hello and welcome to the Daily Space for today, January 16th, 2019. I am your host for today, Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am here to put science in your brain. Now, today is a very spacey day, especially for those of you who are in Europe, Africa, parts of Asia, and other nations that do not include the United States and Canada, and who, thanks to your great location, thank you so much for this sub, Susie, who, thanks to your great location, get to experience today's lunar eclipse. Let me resize this. Things got out of sorts at some point. So this is an animation from timeanddate.com showing over time what tonight's partial eclipse will look like, starting in just a couple of hours for those of you in England. What tonight's eclipse will look like and where it can be seen. You can go to timeanddate.com and get for yourself the exact times that you will be affected. Now, like so many lunar eclipses, this one is tied to a solar eclipse. This would be the solar eclipse that was visible in Chile and Argentina last week. Unfortunately, the precise alignment that allowed that solar eclipse to happen isn't quite still at play for this lunar eclipse, which is why we only see the partial shadow. What is happening is the moon is passing not above, not below like it normally does, but directly through the Earth's narrow shadow. Now, at no point will the moon, even during a complete lunar eclipse, go entirely black. This is because light refracts through our Earth's own atmosphere, and that bent light is able to illuminate even the darkest parts of the moon. Now, in general, there's not a lot of scientific interest in events like this, but you can actually learn a little bit about our Earth's own atmosphere by studying the color of the moon during an eclipse. If our atmosphere is filled with the kinds of particles that like to scatter shorter wavelength light. So if our atmosphere is full of soot, pollution, ash from lava, fire soot from, forest fires, all of that different stuff up in the atmosphere can scatter out the bulk of the blue and green light, leaving behind just the reds that create a blood red moon that we see during so many lunar eclipses. And what's kind of cool is different people in different places are going to see different light, different photons of light that are getting scattered through our atmosphere and bounced off the moon. And this means that observers in different parts of the world just might see the moon appearing a slightly different color. So if you are in one of the places that will experience tonight's partial eclipse, get yourself out, take a look, take a photo, share it with us, and let's figure out, is our atmosphere that kind of clear that gives you a gray-blue moon, or is it that kind of, chock full of stuff that leads to a blood red moon? Now, to repeat what I said yesterday, if you somehow missed it in all of the news that's out there, today is the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 liftoff from Kennedy Space Flight Center down in Florida. A Saturn V topped with the Apollo 11 capsule took off from Launch Pad 39A at 8:32 a.m. Eastern Time, so now more than 50 years ago, and headed off with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on board, ready to set foot on the moon, and poor Michael Collins also on board, who would be left behind to orbit the moon, waiting to rendezvous with his crewmates 2 days later and safely return back to the planet Earth. This week, special events are taking place just about everywhere. And while the American flag can be seen in almost all images from this particular, well, space mission, the International Astronomical Union likes to point out that this shouldn't be a celebration of an American achievement, but rather it should be seen as the celebration of human achievement. It was a multinational team that put these men on the moon so many years ago, back before I was born. So celebrate somehow. However you choose to look at things, this anniversary has led to a complete flood of memorabilia, from Lego landers to rockets. It has led to a flood of new documentary films, including the aptly named Apollo 11, which uses this image on its movie poster. This particular documentary film uses archival video, photos, and audio to put together this new style documentary that is really worth a watch and will give you a glimpse into scenes you've probably never seen before. So check it out. The kinds of places you're most likely to find it include science centers and art house cinema. Okay. Now, one of the things I mentioned yesterday is I didn't really expect there to be all that much science news this week because everyone's eyes are turned towards the moon, and I think most of the press officers are tied up in, well, being pressy about the Apollo 11 anniversary. But there is one story that knew it could still dominate the news cycle in the face of all these Apollo 11 celebrations. And this is a story of cosmology led by none other than cosmologist Wendy Friedman. What feels like almost every week, I've been seeing news articles talking about the current discrepancies in how we measure the age and expansion rate of our universe. Folks using Planck data, studying the cosmic microwave background, are looking at over and under densities in the original mass distribution of our universe and are taking those observations and calculating things forward to come at a modern expansion rate of what should be 67.4 kilometers per second per megaparsec. This means that every megaparsec of space, roughly every 3,000 light years of space, you're going to see every second an expansion of 67.4 kilometers. Now, at the same time, people who are going out and measuring the distances to objects that we can measure the distances to, and then measuring how fast those objects appear to be moving away from us, they're getting a distance when they use Cepheid variable stars of 74 kilometers per second per megaparsec. The error bars on these two sets of measurements are really small, and this is a discrepancy of 9%, leading folks to wonder if there is something wrong with our measurements or with our understanding of physics. So the best way to sort this kind of discrepancy, where you have two sets of measurements made with two entirely different techniques, is to find another technique. And this was something that came up yesterday when I mentioned that it may be possible to use neutron star mergers as a new kind of standard candle. Now, we can't do that yet. So, well, Wendy Friedman's team, they wanted to directly measure the expansion of our universe. And to do this, they needed to measure the distance, the actual distance to an object. And once they'd measured its distance, measure how fast it appeared to be going. Now, one way to do this is to look at an object that we know how much light it's giving off, a standard luminosity object. Cepheid variables are considered to be this kind of an object. Type 1a supernova, that are explosions of white dwarf stars, all of which have, we think, about the same mass at the moment of explosion, give off, we believe, the same amount of light during that explosion. This means that when we see a type 1a supernova, we know how many photons should be coming off. We measure how much light we actually detect. We measure the brightness that it appears to be. And by looking at a comparison between those two different numbers, the actual luminosity and the apparent brightness, we can calculate the distance. Now, this technique requires us to know how much light a Cepheid is actually giving off. And we think we know, but there's room for us to question ourselves. So Wendy and her team went and used a different kind of star, a red giant star. In fact, they used the brightest red giant stars in a variety of different galaxies, looking for the red giants in the halos of the galaxies with the Hubble Space Telescope. And by thinking they know how luminous those stars should be, and by measuring how bright they appear to be, Wendy Friedman's team measured a new value for the expansion rate of the universe. And it was hoped, and hope is always a dangerous word, that her results would match either the Cepheid results or the Planck results, lending credence to one of those two methods. But no, instead, her team's results came out straight in the middle at 72 kilometers per second per megaparsec. So we still need more work. And this is the kind of science that a lot of us get excited by, because it means that we don't understand either something really fundamental about the universe, which would be really cool and probably get Adam Rees a second Nobel Prize, or it means that we don't understand something really fundamental in our data sets, which could change our view of the universe, as whatever it turns out we're not understanding in our data has to get propagated through everything we thought we'd learned. So it could be there's a slight discrepancy in our understanding of Cepheids, in our understanding of red giants, and our understanding of the cosmic microwave background. And we don't know where the issue lies. So I suspect this is the kind of story I'm going to be reporting on week after week for a long time to come. And thank you so much for the follow, Jay Meeker. Is that Jim Meeker, who I happen to know in real life out there? So Astro B is asking, how do you feel about Dr. Paul Matt Sutter stating that the Big Bang is not really true? I haven't talked to him about exactly what he means yet, and I haven't read his book yet, so I'm going to defer comment. I don't know if he's making a semantic argument, because the word Big Bang is really kind of a stupid name that's non-descriptive, so I'm not sure where his issue lies. Hey, it's good to see you, Jim. It's good to see you. Okay, so that's all the science I've got for today. I can see Susie is already in the slide deck working to put everything together to post out to our Patreon supporters. And this is a great chance for me to say, first, type in your questions and please tag at CosmoQuestX, and I will go through and answer everything you ask. And while you're typing those questions in, let me remind you that we are a production of the Planetary Science Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to exploring our universe and beyond. Your donations, every bit, every sub here on Twitch, every dollar you give over on Patreon goes into allowing me to pay Susie, to pay Annie, to keep this show going day after day. So thank you for everything that you give. And we understand not everyone has money to give. There's lots of things I would love to support and I can't. So for instance, I realized I can't support our local dog rescue monetarily anymore. So instead, that fluff ball in the lower left-hand corner that I'm about to show you, that fluff ball, whose head you can't see, he's a foster dog. The Central Aussie Rescue needed places to put dogs, and that was something I could offer. Well, many of you are helping out CosmoQuest by offering your time and your energy, by mapping out Bennu, by spreading word of what we're doing to your local astronomy clubs, to your friends, your enemies, and everyone in between. All of you out there supporting us through these additional efforts, that means the world to us. And if some of you are wondering, how can I help? Right now, the biggest thing you can do is help us map out the asteroid Bennu. This annoying rock in outer space. Bennu is complicated. We thought when we first mapped it that it was going to be an object where each image had maybe 50 to 100 small rocks, maybe 10 to 20 at most boulders, and a whole lot of dirt. And what we're seeing actually is this, where all those large objects in this image, those are boulders, all of them. And we need to find someplace safe to stick down our spacecraft. And what the Bennu mission team has asked our CosmoQuest community to do is to go in and mark the longest axes of every single one of these boulders, and to also go in and mark the centers of every single rock. We have an extension to do this through to Monday, and we're making really good progress. But we can't get this done without you. So if everyone out there listening to my voice could please go to bennu.cosmoquest.org and map out at least one image, that would help. And if you could each do 5 or 6 images, that would be amazing. And to those of you who are doing hundreds of images, you're my heroes. I can't believe what you're capable of. And I'm going to try and find some way to acknowledge all of you. So go map. I'm really looking forward to eventually sending an email to someone saying, yes, you mapped out that image that follow-up observation showed would be perfect to go and scoop up a soil sample with the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. So help us map Bennu and help us figure out exactly where is the safe place to grab some soil and the scientifically interesting place to explore. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and look at all of your questions. There's a lot of names I haven't seen today. It's always good to see new names. Welcome, everyone. Roria Rose, you're always welcome to lurk. Susie, once again, thank you so much for your Twitch Prime support. So Paranor is asking how the frames are on my end. Ooh, we're having crappy frames. I'm going to actually type that in. So I'm not sure why we're having so many frame drops. Sorry. I see people, apparently today's stream sucked. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm glad that the audio seemed to be pretty good. Reload the page if need be due to Twitch being twitchy today. Okay. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. This is definitely a problem with Twitch's servers. Um, Kerbal is asking, what's your opinion on the recent development reconstruction of the 30-meter telescope? I had a good rant about this, I think, on Friday. I'm personally kind of frustrated that with so many peoples and nations that really, really wanted to have the 30-meter telescope on their land and on their mountaintops, the consortium nevertheless decided to put the mountain where it would really, for lack of a better phrase, piss off a lot of the indigenous people. For those of you who aren't aware of the political issues, Mauna Kea is leased by the Hawaiian Department of Natural Resources from the indigenous peoples for something like $1 a year out to the University of Hawaii, which is the administrator of the Mauna Kea Observatory facilities. In the original lease agreement from, I believe it was 1968, there was a 65-year lease put into place that dictated that only a certain number of telescopes could be on the mountain at any given moment. And while following the letter of the agreement, the University of Hawaii hasn't always followed the spirit of the agreement. And when the agreement was made, it was never anticipated that telescopes of this size would be constructed or that anything would ever appear to rise up out of this dormant volcano's crater at the top. This means that giant double telescopes like Keck 1 and 2 are counted as a single facility, that radio telescope arrays are counted as a single facility, allowing the count to allow the 30-meter telescope to still be built. And this facility will rise up and be visible from many parts of the mountain. And during its construction, they're going to close off access to various parts of the mountain that the agreement says the indigenous people will continue to have access to. That's all just kind of generally disrespectful. And there's overall concern that because this is such a massive facility that is just now starting construction, when the current lease agreement runs out in 2033, it's hard to imagine automatic renewal not being granted or the land just being taken via eminent domain based on, well, look at the size infrastructure that's been built there. Who wants to just tear it down because of some lease with the indigenous people? That's the kind of comment that unfortunately has been made by a variety of people. And when there are places in Chile, Mexico, the Canary Islands that desperately wanted the contract to build this mountain, yeah, it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating. I'm going to stop ranting now. I'm going to stop ranting. Twitch is being like clouds at an eclipse. That is entirely true. But you got most of the audio. Okay. I'm so sorry that everything is being frustrating today. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to stop torturing you and tell you I'll be back tomorrow. We do the Daily Space most Mondays through Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. That is